It's time for Minn Kota Unlock the Lake, second stop of the year for the Bassmaster Elite Series 2022. The Harris chain of lakes in Central Florida, Leesburg, Florida. All together, these lakes, let me call them out here, Ronnie. Harris, Little Harris, Eustis, Griffin, Dora, Beauclair, Carlton, and Apopka. Together, just the lakes themselves make up 75,000 acres. That's the size of a good size regular stop on the Bassmaster Elite Series, not to mention all the connecting canals. But Ronnie, during the first, especially 2 or 3 days of the tournament, it seemed like 90% of the field was all in just one of those lakes.
Yeah, I think on day one, Tommy, we actually had 6 cameras out on the water, and we got to see 6 different lakes come into play. But as the tournament went on, like you said, half of our people who made the day 3 cut were living in Lake Harris, which is where our takeoff location was, and it was also where a great contingent of hydrilla was. And that's why we saw a lot of our leaders early in the event came from there. We saw Buddy Gross obviously won the event, but also was the day 2 leader as well. Those guys sampled Harris very well. I think that Harris showed out because that grass that was protected around that island, it really was a great highway for fish pre-spawn, post-spawn, and probably fish that were spawning within the vicinity of that grass line.
It lasted a lot longer than most of our experts expected it to. And Buddy Gross, I mean, our winner actually came from there, although he was not, shall we say, in the thick of it. He was kind of nibbling around the edges of it.
Yeah, he's not a guy who likes the middle of the pizza. He likes the crust, and he was just kind of on the edges of it. He never really dug into one specific area in Harris. He always changed it up. He said on the phone after the event, man, I caught him in 2 or 3 different spots over the last few days. I had to always adjust. I always had to figure it out. And I think that was what ended up killing all those people in the Banana Cove region. They ended up cannibalizing each other and did not win the event, but we saw a lot of guys fishing that area. Ray Hanselman rose to the top of the leaderboard, as well as Kenta Kimura, both throwing different lures than most anglers. Obviously, Ray Hanselman keyed in on that hybrid hunter from striking, a different kind of diving crankbait, one great for grass. Meanwhile, we see a guy like Kenta Kimura throwing a speed worm above the grass. That was a big deal, but we did see anglers sample it every morning at minimum to get a quick limit, and that was a guy like David Mullins. He would get in there every morning, start with 5 fish in Harris. He would end up making the run through the Dead River, go through Eustis, Haynes Creek, and he would lock through to Griffin, and that was where we start to see him rise up later in the event. Day 3, he was basically our unofficial leader all day long, but he did say, I'm worried going into the final day. I was running out of fish. I was not seeing nearly as many fish in Griffin. So he ended up leaning on that area in Banana Cove to get a limit on that final day. But there were some other anglers who also kept Griffin in play.
Absolutely. One of the greatest performances of the tournament happened to be Drew Benton, who really based his operations around there and the connecting canal.
Yeah, if he would have had maybe a poorer practice in another region, he would have put all his eggs in the Griffin basket. But he dedicated day 2, 3, and 4 to Griffin and ended up finishing 2nd place in this event. But it's always very interesting. There are thousands of canals at the Harris chain, many lakes to choose from where you go, but which canals fire up during the full moon? Which ones have a flood of fish, or the ones that are not pressured? He ended up going in Griffin. That's kind of an ordeal to get through there. People did not go to Griffin as heavily as we maybe thought previously, and he had a lot of those canals to himself, ended up making that charge, had over 60 plus pounds for 3 days from day 2 through 4, made a big surge into 2nd place.
And how about our day 1 leader, Brandon Lester? That was a great performance. It was an up and down roller coaster for Brandon Lester throughout the course of the thing, but 23 pounds on day 1. Dora and Beauclair were the 2 lakes that he concentrated on during the 4 days.
We were very excited to see Brandon Lester start so strong in Dora on day 1. We said, ooh, this is going to be a different mixture. We're going to see something a little different than the people maybe in Apopka, Harris, Griffin, Eustis, all those lakes. We were seeing something a little bit different. And for Lester, big start to the day, but we really saw it get tougher on him day 2. He had to adjust and ended up coming through big on day 3 and day 4, finishing in the top 5. But Tommy, I want to talk about Brandon Lester's track record in Florida. He may hail from Tennessee and he may love his home state, the Volunteer State, but he would probably buy and have a retirement house in the state of Florida. The last 10 times we've been there, whether it's the Elite Series or the Opens, whether it's the St. John's, Harris chain, Kissimmee chain, or Okeechobee, he's had a top 35 10 straight times. That is putting money in the bank account, including earlier this year when he got his first victory.
Yeah, when he's in Florida, he is not pining for his Smoky Mountain home. He feels perfectly at home there. And Brandon Lester, hats off to him. Our day 1 leader, just too much up and down for him to be standing there with the trophy at the end of the day.
Yeah, and one other aspect I'll mention, we got to see a new influx on the Harris chain, the added addition of Apopka. Apopka was basically a big dead mass of water. No one would ever go there. 2 or 3 boats would go there. We saw
You're talking about a decade ago.
Yes, a decade ago, and it has came on so strong recently. We had over 20 anglers on day 1 travel to Apopka, and that was an added flair to this event that was much welcomed. We got to see a couple guys in our top 10 do that, but I think that lock situation, only 3 boats at a time, the process it gets through there, and the length away from Harris ended up hurting the guys potentially who wanted to try to win it from Apopka, but an added flair to the 8 lakes that make up the Harris Chain.
All right, and that is your Minn Kota Unlock the Lake for the Harris Chain.